important questions you need to be asking right at the gate, right when you begin your interviews, that you need to be asking, the interviewer or the recruiter who you're speaking to. Now, caveat, all right? So exception to this rule, certain interviews out there, certain organizations, and I'm speaking about maybe the public sector, federal government, provincial government, those types of roles, might have a highly structured interview process whereby you might not be able to ask these questions right out the gate. So you have to make your assessment, folks, of whether it's a highly structured interview process where they might not be accepting of questions, throughout the conversation. So just a heads up to everyone, all right? So you have to keep that in mind. If it's, and again, this usually applies to public sector, federal government, provincial government. Those interviews are highly structured, and they usually let you know up front, okay, this is how the interview is going to go. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. And the questions are going to be right at the end. So there might not be much flexibility in that case. So this is where you have to practice your own judgment and your discretion. So just keep that in mind, all right? Now, first of all, before we even get into why you need to be asking questions right at the gate or early on in your conversation as possible, or even some of you might be thinking, Dean, aren't we only supposed to ask questions right at the end? Like, why would I, isn't this going to annoy the people? Is it going to throw them off guard? Folks, this is a conversation. The biggest problem you're going to face as a job seeker in your interview cycle, in your job search, the biggest mistake you can make at an interview is seeing it as an interview, right? As contradictory as that sounds, that's the biggest mistake you're making. I want all of you to stop looking at it as an interview. It's not simply an interview. Look at it as a conversation. Look at it as a discovery session, right? For all the BAs and the PMs out there, the project managers, the BAs, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And even if not, whatever your role is, whatever your position is, when you're providing a solution to something, when you're providing or taking a look at some kind of a problem, you're not just sitting there and letting your stakeholder or your customer ask all the questions. Absolutely not. And by the way, all my BAs and PM friends, let me know in the comments if you agree with that. Have you ever had a stakeholder meeting where you just sit and let the customer or the stakeholder ask all the questions? Absolutely not. You're probably the one directing and controlling the conversation. You're asking the questions. Of course, they're going to ask some of their own questions, right? Because they're evaluating your ability to solve their problem or help them with whatever problem they have. But for the most part, it's a two-way conversation, right? That's my point. Again, those of you who are BAs, PMs, you're probably already aware of this. Even if you're a software developer, same thing. If you're a systems administrator, same thing. If you're a technical person, same thing. You're probably asking questions first and foremost to get an understanding of what the problem is so that you can assess and provide the right solution and the most context in regards to what they're looking for in a solution, right? So this is what all of you need to keep in mind. First and foremost, the mindset for your interviews, right? Before I even get into the questions, I need you to adjust your mindset. It's perfectly fine for you to be asking questions throughout your interviews, and especially early on, so that you're able to set yourself up for wins, folks, so that you're able to win the conversation and win the interview, right? And yeah, just like Marcus said. So Marcus says, interview that employer. Exactly. Absolutely. Very much a prepared two-way conversation. Don't be all reactive. 100%, Marcus. Well said. So folks, and this is coming from Marcus, right? He's a senior level guy at a senior level in his career. He's not just saying this like something random right here. Like this is based on his own personal experiences as a senior level person in his space, in his field, right? It's a two-way conversation, folks, right? And we got Peter here. So Peter says, yes, I sat one of my worst meetings. So I'm guessing, Peter, what you're saying is you probably experienced this where you just sat and it was just one of your worst meetings, worst interviews, right? So the point here, folks, is you need to adjust your mindset and understand it's a two-way conversation. It's not just about you sitting there and just answering a whole bunch of questions. Going back to my live stream from last week, remember what I said. For those of you who tuned in, you're a problem solver. You're a solution provider. You're not a job seeker. Maybe you think of yourself as a job seeker, but the interviewer, the hiring manager, they see you as someone who's there to potentially help them solve a problem. So you need to ask questions. You need to prepare your own questions to ask. Now, right off the gate, okay, now getting right into the meat of this, your interviews can start in one of two ways, okay? There's one of two ways your interviews can start and proceed. Now, scenario one is they're just going to start asking you questions right away. There might be some small talk here and there. Hey, welcome. How was the trip? How was the commute? Oh, the weather is crazy. Hey, blah, 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 ha, 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 whatever. And then they're going to get right into it. And there's one of two ways it's going to progress from this standpoint, folks. Scenario A is they're going to get right into the questions. They're going to be like, okay, yeah, so can you tell me about yourself? Or So I see that you're recently at company ABC. Can you tell me about that position? I'd say 95% of the time, folks, unfortunately, this is how the interviews are going to start, and this is how it's going to proceed. Now, the remainder of the way, like, I'd say maybe 5 to 10% actually. So let me adjust that and say, 90 to 95% of the time, your interviews are going to start like that. They're just going to get right into the questions. Now, between 5 to 10% of the time, before they actually get into the questions, the interviewer is going to give you the courtesy of providing some background about the project, what they're looking for in an ideal candidate. And by the way, those are the best. I mean, that's the best. If you're an interviewer, like, that's what you need to be doing, folks. If you're an interviewer, you're a hiring manager, you should be providing that context to the candidates. That's how you should be starting your interviews, right? That way, it's not a guess game. The candidate's not trying to guess what's important to you, and you're not going to get bored and be hearing about stuff that's not relevant to you, right? So see if you can, if you're an interviewer, you're watching this, try and provide that context up front so that the candidate knows what to focus on. But anyway, getting back to this, so for the job seekers there, 5 to 10% of the time, they're going to let you know the context, the background, the project details, why it's urgent, why they're looking for someone for the role. Now, in that scenario, it gives you context, and you as a job seeker, at this point, what you need to do is you need to take note of what they're telling you and ensure that your responses and your answers to your questions are relevant to the information that they provided you with, right? Because you have the context, you don't have any excuse now for going off topic and talking about stuff that won't make sense to them or doesn't matter to them. So keep that in mind, right? Now, what I'm going to focus on today is scenario A, which is 90 to 95% of the time where they're just going to get into the questions, right? So the two questions you need to be asking, and by the way, I did kind of lie. I'm not going to share 2 questions. I'm actually going to share with you 3 questions you need to be asking early on in the conversation as possible, right? And the first question is, and this needs to be asked as early on. Actually, I would suggest right at the gate, right early on in the conversation, right after the introductions. You need to be asking, this is question number 1, folks. If you're taking notes, you need to write this down. Question number 1 is, what are you looking for in an ideal candidate? This is a very important question to ask so that you get an idea and you get clues and an understanding of what they're looking for in an ideal candidate, right? That's question number 1. What are you looking for in an ideal candidate for this role? Question number 2 you need to be asking is, and again, early on in the conversation, right? Because I know, I already know a lot of you are probably thinking, yeah, I'm going to ask this at the end. No, folks, if you ask these questions right at the end, it's going to be too late. It's going to be irrelevant, and you're going to look like a dummy, because it doesn't make sense for you to ask these questions right at the end after the conversation is almost done and they're about to wrap up. You need to ask these questions right at the beginning, right? So again, question number 1, what are you looking for in an ideal candidate? And by the way, I'm going to show you in a few minutes how to actually structure this conversation, right? So don't feel all confused in how you're going to do this. I'm going to get to that shortly. Question number 2, what are you looking for this ideal candidate to accomplish in this position, right? That's question number 2. And bonus question number 3, the bonus question is, why are you looking to hire for this position at this time? Why is this position urgent for you to hire someone for at this time? Three key questions you need to be asking early on in the conversation as possible, folks. Do not ask these at the end. It's going to be too late at the end. By the time it's the end, you're wrapping up, the meeting's wrapping up. You don't have enough time to now go back and highlight the most relevant aspects of your background. So asking these 3 questions really lays the groundwork for you and stimulates a discussion whereby you know exactly which aspects of your background you want to highlight, which projects you want to speak about, which accomplishments you want to speak about, which technologies you want to highlight and you want to focus on if you're a technical person, which frameworks, right? And it also lets you know and assess and evaluate how serious they even are about finding the right person for this role, right? And if there even is a sense of urgency, or are they just evaluating people or meeting with people just for some project that's happening like a few months down the line, or a quarter away, or something of that sort, right? And yeah, Marcus says, great questions, Dean. Thanks, Marcus. Appreciate that. So these are the quick 3 questions, folks. Okay, so I'm going to repeat them again, and I'm going to show you how you're going to position these into your conversation. So question number 1, what are you looking for in an ideal candidate for this position? Question number 1, what are you looking for in an ideal candidate for this position, right? Now, question number 2, what are you looking for the ideal candidate in this position to accomplish in this role? Okay, I'll repeat that again. What are you looking for the ideal candidate in this position to accomplish in this role? Now, bonus additional question you can ask when you're asking question number 2 is, and these might be some adjustments, and this could depend on your role and if it's a project or whatever the case. You got to make your assessment here. But what you can do is you can also ask, what are you looking for the ideal candidate to accomplish in this role within the first 30 days, within the first 60 days, within the first 90 days, within the first quarter, within the first 2 quarters, 3 quarters, whatever, within the first year. Put a timeline on it, folks. If you put that, they're going to give you a real, like, it's going to be an even more specific response in regards to what their expectations are. And guess what? It's going to give you an idea about what's the most urgent and immediate need that they have, right? Because their immediate needs within the first 30 days might be very different from what their needs are within the first quarter, right? Totally different. It could be much, if you're talking about a year, their needs might be at a very high level. They'll explain, well, this is the project, this is the scope of the project, this is what we expect in the first year. But if you put that down to the first 30 days, the first 60 days, the first 90 days, that gives you more specific details and information as to what's immediate, what's urgent, what do they need to get done as soon as possible, ASAP, right? So I would suggest ask those very questions, like. And don't be shy to ask those very very specific time frames. Hey, Dean, what are you looking for the candidate in this role to accomplish within the first 30 days? Then Dean gives his response. Dean says, oh, well, we want them to do X, Y, Z, blah, blah, blah. Great. Okay, excellent, Dean. And then how about in the first 60 days? Like, what's the priority? Is it kind of similar to the first 90 days, or what's going to be happening in the first 60 days? How about the first 90 days? How about the first quarter? How about 6 months in? How about in the first year? You got to be asking these questions, folks. You don't want to be a sitting duck. You're not a duck. I don't want all of you sitting in your interviews. You're sitting like ducks and you're just answering a whole bunch of questions. Proactive, folks. You need to be proactive, right? I want you asking these questions, really evaluating the opportunity and evaluating this project. And this information, when you ask these questions, it's going to give you specific information as to what's urgent, what's not urgent, what might be urgent in the future, but not right now, so that you can address those specific aspects of what they need in the ideal candidate to accomplish, as soon as the first 30 days or even within the first year. And you're able to highlight the most relevant aspects of your background, right? So keep this in mind for question number 2. Now, question number 3, why are you looking to hire for this position at this time, for this position? Very important question to ask, folks. This assesses the level of urgency, right? Now, there's a lot of, unfortunately, and I hate to even have to address this, because I'm sure some companies might have reasons for doing it. But I mean, there's fake interviews going on out there, right? So maybe it's a position whereby, they don't need someone right now. It's someone they need from, a few months away. They don't have the budget approved, but they want to interview people. And maybe by interviewing the right people, they're going to use that to approve the budget. Like, who knows? But asking this question, why are you looking to hire for this position at this time? Why is this role something urgent to you personally, Mr. or Miss Hiring Manager, at this time? This allows you to assess from their response how urgent this position is, right? They might even be upfront with you. They might let you know, hey, look, we don't have the budget approved right now, but it's definitely something that I'm personally trying to push for, Mr. or Miss Candidate. I just need to, I'm meeting great candidates such as yourself right now, so that I can approach, the executive team and really see that, whether we can get this budget approved, right? So yeah, Marcus puts a great comment. So Marcus says, we're just meeting people, Dean, just want to know who's out there in the market. Yeah, exactly, Marcus. But hey, you know what, folks, on a serious note, it's possible that might be the case. Now, they might not let you know this up front, but judging, and all of you are for the most part, I do understand most of you are you've been in your field for a while. You're seasoned professionals, right? You can assess when the way they respond, you can assess that they might be a little jittery. They might not be straightforward in their responses. And right away, off the bat, okay, yeah, maybe this person's not going to tell me up front, but you can continue the rest of the discussion with the assessment that, yeah, maybe this is not a real requirement for them right now. But you need to ask these questions, folks, so that you're able to set up the rest of the meeting and the rest of the conversation, right? Now, the next thing a lot of you might be wondering is, well, Dean, how do I really ask these questions? Do I just start, hammering them with the questions right out the gate? And yeah, so I mean, it depends on how they begin. And again, I'm addressing here the 90 to 95% scenario where they just start asking you questions, right? Appreciate that, Francis. Great to hear that you found the insights great. So what you want to do, folks, is, again, the meeting might happen with some small talk initially, right? Like, hey, how was the drive? How was the commute? How's this? How's that? And then they're going to start off with, hey, can you tell me about yourself? or hey, I noticed, Dean, you've been working at company ABC. Can you tell us about that position? Now, you do not want to interrupt or ignore the question and start asking your questions. That's not what you want to do. You want to answer that and respond to that initial question, right? And then you want to transition into your own question. So let's say they say, or what you want to do is, if they ask a question like, tell me about yourself, or tell us about the current company that you're working at. You want to acknowledge the question, like I said, right? You want to acknowledge it. You want to say, hey, absolutely, Mr. or Miss Hiring Manager. I'd be happy to tell you more about this position. But before we continue, I did want to clarify a few things. Now, I have reviewed the job description, and I know the job description probably doesn't do full justice in regards to what the actual needs and requirements are for this position. So before we continue and move further ahead, Mr. or Mrs. Hiring Manager, I want to make sure that I'm providing you with the most relevant details about myself as possible, because I know your time is important to you. So before we begin, can you let me know more about what are you looking for in an ideal candidate for this position? Right? That's how you kick it off, folks. That's how you start it off. So you don't want to ignore their question. You want to acknowledge their question, but at the same time, I want you to push forward and ask this question so that you're able to set the context. Because if you start answering, hey, tell me about yourself, or tell me about your current position, and you start telling them about a whole bunch of stuff that doesn't really matter to them or that's not relevant, that's not going to be very helpful for you, right? So I want you to take control over the conversation at this point. So let's say they ask, hey, hey, Dean, can you tell us about yourself, Dean? My response to that will be, hey, absolutely, Mr. and Mrs. Hiring Manager. I'd be happy to tell you more about myself. And firstly, thanks so much for your time. I'm really excited to be here, really excited about the opportunity and learning more. Now, before we begin, and I go ahead and tell you more about myself, Mr. and Mrs. Hiring Manager, I have reviewed the job description. And I'm sure, the job description doesn't do full justice to what you're looking for in an ideal candidate. So just that I'm able to highlight the most relevant aspects of my background, and I'm sure your time is important to you. I want to make sure I'm not wasting your time. Before we get started, I did want to clarify with you, what are you looking for in an ideal candidate for this position? That's how you get into it, folks, right? And I want you to, I know some of you might be thinking, oh my God, this is going to be nerve-wracking, this and that. Absolutely, folks. I never said the job search is going to be easy. I never said these interview tips are going to be simple and easy. But how are you going to differentiate yourself from the majority of people out there who are just sitting at their interviews and just answering a whole bunch of questions, talking about a whole bunch of stuff that might not be relevant to the hiring manager or the person that they're meeting with? This is going to take courage, folks. It's going to take courage. I'm not going to lie to you. It takes some courage to do this. But if you don't do it, you're just going to be like every other job seeker out there, right? Sitting in there and just answering a whole bunch of questions. So this is going to take some courage. So I need you to direct and take control over the conversation as soon as possible. Because keep in mind, you're there to solve a problem. You're a problem solver. You're a solution provider. The hiring manager is not even, you should not even be looking at them as a hiring manager. You should be looking at them as a customer, as a client. That's the way you need to be looking at them, right? And given that they're a client or a customer, you want to make sure you're able to provide them with the most relevant solution possible, which is why it's important for you to ask these questions, right? So that's how you do that transition. And from there, they let you know, okay, yeah, well, Dean, we're looking to hire for this position. We're looking to hire, such and such candidate with XYZ skill set, for this particular project, because, that's what's going on, blah, blah, blah. Then you respond with, okay, great, excellent. Appreciate you sharing that with me, Mr. and Mrs. Hiring Manager. Now, given what you're looking for, in terms of the ideal candidate, what are you looking for this person to accomplish in this position? And if I might add, Mr. and Ms. Hiring Manager, what would you say you want this person to accomplish within the first 30 days? Oh, well, that's a great question, Dean. Well, within the first 30 days, these are our top priorities are, X, Y, and Z. We definitely want them to do this, this, and this. And then, that. Okay, great, Mr. and Mrs. Hiring Manager. And why exactly is that important for you to accomplish within the first 30 days? Well, because of, blah, 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 X, Y, Z. Good. You're getting more understanding now, right, of what the urgency is. Excellent. And how about in the first, 60 days? How about the first 90 days? How about the first quarter? How about the first year? Get that understanding, folks. You got to get that understanding. And if you feel awkward asking a whole bunch of questions, you can always let them know. You can always let them, make it into a joke, right? You can be like, hey, look, I'm sorry I'm asking you 100 questions. I'm just trying to get as best of an understanding as I can about this position, so I can tell you more about how I can assist you and help you out with this project. So as long as you're okay with that, I do have one more question to ask Mr. and Mrs. Hiring Manager, and that is, why are you looking to hire for this position at this time? Like, why is this role, why is this position on top of your mind right now these days, Mr. Miss Hiring Manager? You need to ask that, folks, right? So those are the top 3 questions. And you know what, when they answer that, and by the way, when they answer the third question, it's going to be like, well, you know, Dean, the reason why this is so important right now, we're like totally backlogged in terms of this project. We really need to get it done. The customer's not very happy with us. We've gotten on a few calls where there's been some yelling happening, and we really need someone in the seat as soon as possible to get this thing done and get this project rolling. Now, what does that tell you, folks? That sense of urgency, that means their customer is angry. They're pissed off. They're angry. It could result in a cancellation of the contract, or who knows what else, maybe even legal action or something, right? So the sense of urgency is high. And that doesn't mean it's always going to be high sense of urgency all the time. But it lets you evaluate how urgent the position is, right? Whether they even need someone immediately. So this is why these 3 questions are key for everyone to ask, for all of you to ask. You need to be asking these questions so that, you know, remainder of the conversation, of course, then they can get into their own questions. They're going to ask you, you know, all of that. And for those of you thinking that, oh, Dean, you know, isn't it going to be annoying to them that I'm going to keep asking them questions? Absolutely not, folks, because you're showing interest. You're showing interest in understanding their problem, what challenges they're facing, and how you can potentially help them. Nothing annoying about that, folks. Nothing annoying about that. I guarantee that. They're going to appreciate that. They're going to appreciate, oh, finally, someone's asking about me and about us and about what our needs are, what our problem is. Right? They're not looking for a job seeker, folks. They're looking for a problem solver. They're looking for a solution provider. No hiring manager says, hey, let's set up this interview so we can meet some job seekers. No. They're saying, hey, let's set up these interviews so we can finally find someone that's going to help us with this problem, with this project, with this solution that we really need. That's their language. The job seeker language, that's your language, folks. Not their language. The organization is not thinking about job seekers. They're thinking about solution providers. And you need to be having and handling that conversation like a solution provider, not as a job seeker. So stop thinking of yourself as a job seeker. Start thinking of yourself as a solution provider. And at these interviews, you're asking questions to better understand the problem, because if you don't understand the problem, you can't provide a customized solution or the most relevant and recommended solution. And that's the mistake a lot of you are making, right? And I'm not telling any of you anything that you don't already know. All of you know this already. It's just a matter of context, right? All of you are thinking about your job search as a job seeker. If you're a PM, if you're a BA, even if you're a software developer, if you're a systems administrator, if you're a web developer, what's the first thing you do before you provide a solution? Put in the comments, folks. What do you do? I don't want to be the one doing all the talking here. Put in the comments. Do you first provide a solution, or do you first ask questions to understand the problem? Put in the comments right now, folks. Give me some interaction here. I'm giving my 100%. I want all of you to put in the comments. What do you do when you have a problem at work? Do you first provide a solution, or do you first seek to understand the problem? Do you ask questions? Do you ask, probing, investigative questions to understand the problem? Let me know in the comments. I'm going to take a quick hydration break. You're probably asking questions, right? I'm sure that's what most of you do, regardless of your role. Regardless of your position, whether you're a janitor, whether you're a C-level executive, when you've got a problem, you're going to be exactly. So Marcus right here, exactly. Marcus says, discover the problem properly. No presumptions from any angle. Right on the dot there, Marcus, right? I mean, you got to understand the problem, right? And BT Nandu says, hey, BT, good to see you here, by the way. I think it's been a while since I see you, but yeah, BT says probe. Exactly. And then we got to understand the problem first. We got Peter here who says provide the ultimate solution, 42. All right. So I guess, Peter, you're a fan of what's that Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, right? The answer to life, the universe, and everything. Yeah, exactly. Absolutely, Peter. Sounds good. So we got Lade here who says, thank you, Dean. Yeah, no worries, Lade. We got Vishwa here who says, ask the question to understand the problem. Exactly, Vishwa, right? Without asking the questions, you can't really understand the problem, right? I do see some questions coming in here. So Sunil says, so how can the elevator pitch be conveyed in this scenario? Yeah, so Sunil, great question and very reasonable question. So Sunil's like, look, Dean, fair enough. You got to ask these questions, but how do we put our elevator pitch? Well, here's the thing, Sunil. After you get a stronger understanding of the problem and what they're looking to solve, getting that understanding, you're able to cater your pitch more to speak to what their problem is, what they need resolved, right? because all of you, who are, all of you who are tuning in here, you probably have a vast experience, vast, accomplishments and achievements and all of that stuff. And all of those are great, but you don't need to speak about all of them, right? Because not all of them are going to appeal to the person that you're meeting with for the interview. So by first asking these questions, Sunil, you're going to get an idea. Okay, what is the core problem they're looking to solve? What are they looking to accomplish? Why do they need someone in this role? What do they want this person to accomplish? That'll allow you to then, when you're responding, then you can continue with your pitch, right? Your elevated pitch, and highlight the most relevant aspects of your background, which speaks to their problem, and that's what's going to capture their attention. So hope that helps, Sunil. And great question, by the way. We got someone says, get a fundamental understanding of the problem. Yeah, 100%. Absolutely. And Lade says, yeah, ask questions first. Absolutely, Lade. All of you know this, folks. All of you already know this. It's just that you're not applying it to your interviews. And really, the interview is that it's an investigative conversation where you're finding out what the problem is and showing how you can help resolve the problem and provide a solution, right? So look, I hope this session was helpful, and it makes sense to all of you out there watching. And I appreciate all of you tuning in. And at this point, folks, I'm going to open the floor for any questions, especially any questions you have in relation to this. Feel free to put it in the comments, and or any other job search questions you have. So anyone who has any job search questions, feel free to put it in the comments. I'll be happy to respond and answer any questions you have. I'll just give that a few seconds. If no one has any questions, I will wrap this up in that case. But let me know your feedback as well. Did everyone find this session helpful? Was this a helpful session? And most importantly, are you going to implement this? It's one thing to just listen to this stuff, folks. You got to take action. You got to implement it and try it out. Francis says, thanks, Dean. Hey, no worries, Francis. Appreciate that. To Sunil. So Peter makes a great point. So Peter says to Sunil, these are not 3 questions. These are only starters for multiple questions for a conversation. Exactly, Peter. You pretty much, that's exactly it. These are not the only 3 questions. These are not just 3 questions you're going to ask, and then, that's going to be it. Like Peter says, folks, this is to stimulate a conversation, stimulate a discussion, right? and it's going to allow you to better, again, it's going to provide you with more context at your end, and it's going to stimulate an actual discussion for the remainder of the conversation, right? So great point there, Peter. I appreciate you adding that in. Francis, you're welcome. No worries. We got Binu here. Thanks, Dean, for that refresher. Yeah, no worries, Binu. Appreciate your feedback. We got some feedback here. Amazing session, as always. I'll be sharing this with our community members. Appreciate that, Imal, and thanks so much for tuning in. Man, I'm already losing my voice, folks. I got to work on this. By the way, anyone have any tips on how to save your voice? I'd appreciate any tips, because this is a problem I experience every week in my live sessions. I start losing my voice. So in any case, I appreciate any advice. Seriously, put any advice you have in regards to that. So Marcus asks, get those 3 questions in at the front end of the interview, but use your people skills to not give a tone that you're trying to take charge of the meeting agenda. The interview, especially the first one, is the employer's meeting. They need to get the info they need from the meeting. Yeah, absolutely. Completely agree with you, Marcus. Completely agree with that. They need to get something out of the meeting as well, folks. So keep that in mind. That's very important for them as well, right? So you don't want it to be just about you asking questions, a whole bunch of questions. They need to be asking their questions as well. The point here is those initial 3 questions, after you ask that, it gives you context so you know what to highlight and what to speak about. And definitely the rest of the discussion needs to be like a conversation, and they need to ask their own questions as well, folks, right? So keep that in mind. And we got, Priyanka says seeking to understand their problem is important. Absolutely. We got Vishwa who says, thank you, Dean. Yeah, no worries, Vishwa. I appreciate that. Sunil says, thanks, Peter, for the feedback. Awesome. We got Felipe who says, Dean, based on your experience at Canada job sector, how is the best way to get a sponsor to entry in IT job market in Canada? Felipe, that's it's kind of a tricky situation right now, because there's just such a high level of candidates locally over here who are without work that are looking to apply for positions. So there might be such a high level of competition, right? Right. Sorry, I'm laughing because I'm losing my voice, guys. Apologies, but so that's the scenario over here, Felipe, right? The high level of competition. So the priority is going to go for people who are already on the ground here. So it might be difficult for you to get sponsorship while you're still overseas. But that being said, keep doing it, keep pushing through, Felipe, keep trying, and hopefully when things settle down here, employees might be open. But that being said, folks, if the available talent is already here on the ground, it's just one less variable the organization has to deal with, right? They don't have to deal with sponsorship or someone who's overseas. They already have people right here on the ground who are able to work for them. So keep that in mind, Felipe. Have a realistic outlook. And I'm not sure if you're in IT. It looks like you are in IT, Felipe. So let's keep in touch. Maybe I can help you out after you relocate over here, right? Thank you. I got some tips from people. So Stephanie says vocal warm-ups, Dean. All right, sounds good, Stephanie. So maybe I should do some karaoke, folks. Maybe after I do these sessions, before I do these sessions, right, to warm up. Lade says warm tea with honey can help, Dean. Awesome. Thanks so much, Lade. I appreciate that. We got Chengir here who says, good to see you, Dean. Thanks a lot for your support always. Yeah, no worries, Chengir. So Chengir is with JVS Toronto. And he's holding a job fair. JVS Toronto is holding a job fair. So make sure if you're a job seeker, you can check it out. I believe there's going to be employers there, which you can do that, right? We got, thank you so much for the great insight. Yeah, no worries. Felipe said, thanks, no worries. Stephanie says, great session, Dean. Being solution-oriented is definitely key. Absolutely. Okay, so Karthik, hey Karthik, good to see you here. So Dean said, Karthik says, Dean, have you seen recession before? There are many students reaching out asking how to enter their job market during recession. I'm quite not sure how to answer as I've not experienced it myself. Yeah, absolutely. Great question, Karthik. I actually graduated during a recession. Well, actually not during the recession, but at the tail end of the recession. And my advice to the entry-level job seekers or any job seeker for that matter, you can't keep doing what you did when the economy was good. You have to adapt, folks. During a recession, you had to take a much more proactive approach, right? Not only applying on online job applications, only depending on online job applications is a losing game, especially now because there's higher competition, right? More people applying for roles. So you need to use every avenue available to you: direct messaging, LinkedIn, LinkedIn posts, LinkedIn messaging, networking groups, virtual networking groups, industry networking groups. You need to be very visible in your space, and you need to be taking those direct approach. Even cold calling, connecting with staffing agencies, connecting with recruiters. You need to use every channel available to you. So that would be my advice, Karthik. So and thanks for tuning in. And yeah, Naveen kind of said that already. Being proactive is the key. Being solution provider, not a job seeker, is key to build up a good rapport right from the beginning rather than waiting for the interview to end. Great insights, Dean. Thanks. Hey, no worries, Naveen. Hope that was helpful. Then someone said, thanks, Dean. It was an efficient session. Hey, no worries. Appreciate your feedback. Ahmed says, thank you for being a light, Dean. Yeah, no worries, Ahmed. Appreciate that. And thanks for tuning in. And then Junaid says, I believe one important question candidates should be probing before the interview or at the start is what need gap is their position supposed to fill? Interviewees can mold their answers accordingly. Yeah, so Junaid, I don't know if you joined the session a bit late, but yeah, I did cover this as one of the questions that needs to be asked. But absolutely, completely agree with you. This is a very important question to ask, right? So some great additional insights there from Junaid. Thanks so much for tuning in. Folks, I hope this was helpful. I'm pretty much losing my voice, so I'm going to end the session right now. But I will do some vocal warm-ups next time so that this is not happening, and maybe drink some honey tea like Lade suggested. And then Bansari says, attending your session for the first time. Great session. Thank you, Dean, for your tips. Hey, no worries, Bansari. Appreciate that. Hope everyone got great information out of it. I'm going to end it right now, folks. My voice is basically about to disappear completely. So I'm going to give it some rest. But thanks so much, everyone, for tuning in. Stay positive. Keep taking action. And look, don't just feel motivated by this. I want all of you to take action. So implement this into your search. Use it, right? Use this information. The replay is going to be up. You can watch the replay if you joined in late, or if you you're watching this maybe a few hours after. Watch the replay. Take notes. take note of those questions and make sure you ask those questions up front or early on in the conversation as possible. Make practical use of it, folks. I'm not here to just motivate you. I'm here to motivate you into taking action. All right. So everyone be positive. Keep taking action. Have a great day, everyone. And we'll talk again soon. All right. Have a good day. Bye.